we're going to move ahead with our agenda. We're going to have a roundtable discussion now involving the 5 airport security groups active in Mexico. They're going to share their vision on SEMS. And in order to facilitate the roundtable, I'm going to introduce the Lieutenant Colonel César Álvarez. He is now coordinating the Borredá Foundation, and well, I believe he's going to facilitate a very interesting panel. We're just halfway through today's session, and we have some 1,500 attendants. So I'd like to thank all of the attendants. Lieutenant Colonel, whenever you're ready. Thank you very much, Javier, and thank you, everyone. Good afternoon and good morning to my dear friends. Good morning to those of us here in this side of the pond. So, in my capacity representing the Borredá Foundation, I must say that it's been really interesting for us to participate in this aviation security conference, particularly this year, which is the year of security culture in civil aviation. If there is one sector that understands and practices security, it's civil aviation. In fact, it's a mirror onto which any operator who wants to be the flagship of security looks into. And we've done so by constantly seeking efficiency and efficacy and implementing processes that can constantly evolve to meet the changing security demands in our field. So today we're going to talk about security management systems in aviation, and we're going to analyze how complex it is to systematize them, put them in practice, and assess them. And for this, we have an extraordinary panel of experts put forward by the organization of the symposium. They represented the different airport groups in Mexico. First of all, we have Raúl Montero, Deputy Manager of Corporate Security at GAP. Gregorio Martinez, who's Head of Security in Civil Aviation in the EASA Airports and Auxiliary Services. Miguel Ángel Antonio Escorcia, Head of Systems and Security Equipment in the Southeast Airports. Francisco Franco, Head of Security at Midland North Airport Group, and Jose Manuel Rubiarte, Head of Security Manager at the International Airport of Mexico City. So let's start with some background, and then from each of you, and then I will be asking questions to each of the panelists. Because there are quite a few of us, I'll try to make sure we stick to the times so that we comply with the dynamics. Raúl Montero, would you like to introduce to us the concept of security system?
Gracias. Buenos días, buenas tardes
Thank you
a
very
todos.
much. Good morning and good afternoon, everybody.
A título de José Manuel González Caballero, el gerente de seguridad del Grupo Aeroportuario del Pacífico,
Caballero,
se
I'm
disculpa
representing
por
and
la
I
causa de
apologize
fuerza mayor.
his absence
Bueno,
because he
para
couldn't
mí es un
attend
honor y un placer
this
estar con ustedes
panel, and
compartiendo
it is a
esta mesa
pleasure
de
for me
debate
to
junto
be
con
a
nuestros
member
compañeros de los
of
grupos
this
aeroportuarios del país.
distinguished panel from the
Bueno, pues
different
el sistema de
airport
gestión de
groups.
seguridad de la
Well,
aviación,
the
como ya lo
security
mencionaron
management system,
precisamente, bueno, José María
as
Peral
José
de
María
OASI
Peral
ya
already
nos dio una
said
explicación
from
bastante
the
nutrida, y qué
ICAO with
mejor que,
a
bueno, de la propia organización, que es la que
long
nos está
explanation.
normando y y recomendando
It's great
medidas de
to
seguridad
receive
para esta
their
industria.
information
Bueno,
because
pues
it is
hizo
the
la descripción
organization
detallada.
generating
Lo
regulations,
interesante de
everything.
los sistemas de gestión,
And
como pueden ser, que son metodologías o herramientas que
there are
estamos utilizando
methodologies
para poder
and
estructurar
different
y
tools that
poder
we're using in order
organizar de manera
to structure and
sistemática
organize in a
pues
systematic way
estas medidas de seguridad de la aviación
these
civil,
security
pues
measures.
nos sirve efectivamente este sistema de
And of
gestión.
course, this
Podemos
management
considerarlo como una
system is
metodología,
the one
como una
for it. It is
herramienta,
considered as
ya
a
que como
methodology and a
herramienta pues
tool,
está
because
trabajando
as a tool,
principalmente en la
it is
integración de
working
la gestión
with
de
the
los riesgos de
integration
seguridad,
of the
basado
security
principalmente
risks,
en la
management of the
identificación de
security
las
risks,
amenazas.
based on
Y digamos
identifying
en una
threats.
manera resumida de lo explicado por OASI del
And
sistema de
as
gestión,
explained by the
principalmente
ICAO,
estos sistemas de
mainly
gestión
these
hacen una
management
evaluación
systems
continua de todas
carry
las
out a
medidas de
continuous
seguridad que tenemos
evaluation of the
descritas
security
en
measures
cada
that
uno
are
de nuestros
described
programas de
in
seguridad
each of our security
de la
programs
industria, es decir,
in
todos
the
los aeropuertos
industry.
contamos con un
All the
documento el
airports
cual
have
se
a
rigen las
document
medidas de
where
seguridad,
you establish
procedimientos para
all
poderlos
the
aplicar
procedures
basado en
and
las
security
amenazas que estamos
measures
presentando.
based on the
Y
threats
bueno,
that we
pues
present.
esta metodología de manera sistemática
And
pues une
this
de esa
methodology
forma algunos componentes que integran estos
includes
documentos,
several
¿no?
components.
¿Cuál es el beneficio que
What is
podemos
the
tener en un
benefit
sistema de
that we
gestión?
could
Bueno,
have
pues son
from a
tanto
security
objetivos como
management
beneficios,
system?
ya los
Well,
explicó José
these
María
were
Peral,
already
pues
explained
la
by José
cultura de
María Perales,
seguridad.
but the
Es
security
decir,
culture is one
esta
of them.
ventaja que nos da
It
de
is an
promover
advantage
entre la
because
comunidad
it promotes
aeroportuaria, es
among
decir,
the
todos los que
airport
integramos
community, that is all the
el círculo de
participants,
la
all the
aviación,
stakeholders,
aeropuertos,
all
líneas
the
aéreas,
members
prestadores de
of
servicios
airlines,
complementarios, pues generar
providers,
esa cultura de
airports, to
seguridad
generate
apte
this
para que
security
podamos
culture
tener
in
un
order
modelo
for
o
us
un
to have
sistema
a
que pueda ser
system or a model
retroalimentado
that
con
can
toda la
be
información que se
fed
puede
with all the
recabar de cada uno de
information
los
we can
actores.
compile from
Esto
each of
también
these
igual, una
stakeholders.
vez
In the
teniendo
same
esta
way,
información y esta
having this
metodología,
information
pues
and this methodology
definir un
defined, we
enfoque
have to define
sistemático
a
basado en el
systematic
riesgo,
approach,
utilizando la
a
identificación
comprehensive
de las
approach,
amenazas y junto
identifying
con
the
ello pues
threats,
poder llevar
and
a cabo
together
la
with
gestión y la
that, we have
mitigación
to
de los riesgos, ¿no?
mitigate
Como
the risks
lo explicaron
accordingly, as it
en
was
la exposición
mentioned
de OASI, ¿no?
by the
Y bueno, pues
ICAO
el sistema como tal tiene
presentation.
pilares
Well,
o
the
tiene
system as such
componentes muy
has
estructurados y muy
components or
fuertes
pillars
para
that are
poder
really strong in
desarrollarlos.
order
Ya
to
también
develop them.
Joan Parrado del Dorado pues nos
Joan
habló de uno de
already
ellos en relación a la
said
respuesta
from
ante
the
los
El Dorado
incidentes. Pero
this
bueno,
kind
no es
of elements, but
vale la pena seguir mencionando
it
estos
is worth
7
to
pilares,
continue
que es la
mentioning these 7
responsabilidad y
pillars because it
compromiso de la
is responsibility and
administración, en este
commitment by
caso
the
del gestor que va a
administration.
tener a
In this case,
cargo
the manager who
sistema de
will be in
gestión,
charge of this
el
management
compromiso firmado
system,
y además
the
moral también para poder llevar a
commitment,
cabo
not only a signed
esta
up
actividad
contract,
y
but the moral
este
commitment
seguimiento
in order
a este
to
programa
be sure that
sistemático. Y
a
junto con ello, pues también
follow-up, a
poder
systematic
definir tanto
follow-up is
recursos
going to be
materiales,
done,
poder
and
definir los recursos
assign
humanos que
or
se tienen que
allocate
destinar
the
para que este
human
sistema pueda
resources
tener
and
una
all the
efectividad
necessary
dentro de la
resources
organización,
for
dentro
the protocol to
de
be
los aeropuertos, en este
effective
caso
in all the
para los que
airports
nosotros estamos trabajando. Y
for
bien, bueno,
which we are
pues
working.
como decíamos, el otro
And
pilar, la
as
gestión
I
de las
said, the other
amenazas y los
pillar
riesgos, ¿no? Es
is
muy
managing
importante
threats and
que en el
risks.
día a
It is
día
very
y con la
important that
experiencia que
on our
vamos
daily
teniendo con
operation and
la
with the
seguridad en los
experience that we
aeropuertos,
are
pues estas
gaining,
amenazas se van
these
presentando y de una u
threats
otra forma, de
come
manera
up,
reactiva,
and
nos vamos
we
reaccionando.
need to react
Esta
to
herramienta
them.
como
This
sistema de
tool
gestión, bueno, pues
as
también
a
nos da
management
esta
system
parte de poder llevar a cabo
will
una
also
proactividad
make us
en
be
esa
more
medida para
proactive
poder llevar a cabo
in
la
order
gestión de las
to
amenazas y obviamente
manage
con la
the
gestión de la
threats
identificación de amenazas y
by
efectivamente pues, la gestión
identifying
de
the
los
threats,
riesgos,
of
¿no?
course.
También habla como componente clave pues
As
la
a key
supervisión, la
component, we
notificación y
also
mejora
have the
continua del
supervision
rendimiento de los
and the
sistemas
continuous
basados,
improvement
por
of the
ejemplo, en
systems
nuestro caso, en unos sistemas de
based
control
on
de
our
calidad
case
que
on
pueden
the quality
representar
control
pues información muy acertada
that
y
can
atinada
provide
como parte de lo que se viene
very
trabajando en
accurate
los aeropuertos, ¿no?
information
Y bueno, ya nos habló
about what's
el
going on
Dorado
in the
de
airports,
la
and
respuesta ante los
as
incidentes.
in El
Y
Dorado,
bueno,
we
pues
need
dentro
to have an
de los dos
incident
pilares
response,
faltantes, la
and in the
formación y
2
la
pillars we
comunicación
are
es
missing
también
still
básico y
training
fundamental
and
para
communication.
este
These
sistema, ¿no?
are
La formación,
critical.
sabemos que
Training is
lo
so
que nosotros
critical.
queremos que
We
se pueda
know
implementar
that
y podamos
whatever can be
trabajar
implemented and
al
whatever
pie
can be
del
worked
aeropuerto en todas sus
on
funciones y en
site,
todas
on
sus
the airports,
actividades
in
para
all
poder
its
llevar a cabo el
activities,
procesamiento de los
so that we
pasajeros,
can
la revisión de los equipajes, etcétera,
handle all the
pues la
passengers,
capacitación es algo
screening
fundamental, ¿no?
baggage. Well,
Entonces, permear
training is
todo
so essential for that.
concepto de un sistema
So the
en la
concept of a
comunidad, ese es
system
un reto muy
in the
interesante
community
y
is a very
igual
interesting
nos lo
challenge.
comentaron. Y por último, la
And
comunicación es
finally,
tener de manera activa y proactiva
we need to have
este
an active
vínculo
and
entre la
proactive
comunidad
link
y el
between the
gestor del
community
sistema, en este
and
caso
the
los aeropuertos,
manager,
para poder
the airports in
transmitir
this case,
lo
in
que
order
nos vaya
to
sucediendo o lo que
convey
queremos
or to
conseguir
inform
para que
about
este
what is
sistema
going
siga
on and what we
funcionando.
want to achieve
Y
for
bueno,
this
ese
system to
sería
continue
a
working.
grosso modo, y bueno,
So
pues
that
como
would
les
be
mencioné
in
ya, José
general
María Peral de
lines.
OASI nos
And
explicó
as the
perfectamente lo que
ICAO
consideran
member
el
already
sistema de
said,
gestión de
what they
seguridad, y nada
consider
más
to
lo
be a
único que
security management
me
system.
gustaría
That's
agregar
everything I had to
sería,
say. I
bueno,
would
pues
just like
toda
to
esta
add
metodología,
that all this
obviamente publicada por la
methodology
Organización de
published
Aviación
by
Civil, pues la
the
encontramos en
Civil
los documentos de
Aviation
referencia. Básicamente es un
Authority
manual que
is
se llama
found
el
in
Manual
on
de
a
Seguridad de la
manual
Aviación.
that is
Ahí es
called
donde se
the
contiene
Civil
toda esta
Aviation Manual.
información, y
You can
paso a
find all
paso
this
va
information step
describiendo
by step.
tanto
It
el
describes
objetivo, los
the
beneficios, los componentes
purposes,
claves
the
y, bueno, la
benefits,
forma
the
en la
key
que podemos
components, and
implementar
the way we can
un sistema
implement
de gestión,
a
¿no?
management
El factor
system.
importante es que esta
The main
información
factor
igual,
here is
pues
that
a
this
través de nuestras
information
autoridades aeronáuticas de
through
cada
our
país
different
debemos ir
aviation
trabajando
authorities in our
la
countries,
estructura, la formación
we're
y
working
la
on the
integración
structure, on
de estos procedimientos, ¿no?
the
Ese
training,
sería mi
and on the
comentario.
integration of these processes.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much.
El cuadro que estamos dibujando. Una pregunta para Gregorio.
One question for Gregorio.
¿Cuál sería el marco normativo de un CEMS?
What would be the regulatory framework for SEMS? I would like to first thank for inviting me to participate here, and José Garguello, the General Manager of the Aeropuertos y Servicios Auxiliares, Airports and Auxiliary Services, apologizes for he couldn't be here, but I am here in his representation. So coming into the subject matter, Aeropuertos and Servicios Auxiliares administers 61 refueling stations around the world. At national level. Here in civil aviation, it has a bigger relevance, and it is covered in its objectives as they are included in their document. ASA in 2018 tried to create a management system for civil aviation security, where we identified 4 big stages in order to execute it. The first would be diagnosis, second one was design, the third one was implementation, and the fourth would be evaluation. So in design, we realized that we needed national regulations, regulations at national level to tell us what are the steps to be followed in order to have a better implementation, to reach to the best implementation policy. So what we did in ASA, in the first part, which was the diagnosis, is we realized we needed the support by the authorities and the different external entities in order to identify at local level, at state level, and at national level, which are the threats that we have and which are the risks that we have at airports. We could do that internally, but what's happening out of the perimeter of the airport? We needed that, and for that, we had to involve the different authorities and companies from the state, so they would share all that critical information. On an airport, when we are out of the airport, we needed that information. We are really vigilant in terms of what our authorities tell us about new regulations. We are willing to create a SEMS, a security management system for all the airports in Mexico. And we believe that this is going to be fundamental to have a compulsory regulation telling us step by step what are the things to be implemented. That was my comment. All right. What is the difference? And this is a question for José Ángel Orozco. When we speak about security management system, what is the difference with the one about operational security? Can we have an explanation about the difference? Yes, hello, good morning, everybody, and good afternoon in Spain. Good morning for all the participants to this forum. I would first like to thank the Grupo Aeroportuario del Pacífico and because they organize this event. About your question, César, it seems there is a similarity between operational security management system or a security management system, because they share the main elements. They have the same taxonomy, and they both have a security culture. They both have evaluation about compliance of these security items or operational security items. Both have an information system that covers the risks, and specifically for operational security, they are operational risks, of course, but they are unintended risks. And that's a small difference versus the security management system, because the risks in the context of aviation, they are called threats, because in the end of the day, they could become an incident, right? So in this sense, the threats are intentional. So this is one of the differences we could find. Virtually, regarding the method to compile data or promote security culture, in this side of things, there are many similarities, of course. And there are other factors that in this security context are also different. For example, the operational risks in an operational security management system are endogenous. That is endogenous to the system. They are inherent to the system. They are in the core of the system. In the case of operational security management system, many of these threats, if we speak from the perspective of the aviation security, these threats are usually exogenous threats. It doesn't mean they all are, but there are some endogenous threats, such as the concept that we know as insider. This is the person or the group that is inside the organization, and that represents a threat, a latent threat, a dormant threat, which is not known until they materialize, or a risk generated by this potential threat can be identified. In this sense, there is an intervention, a different intervention between the operational security management system and the aviation security management system in terms of defining the exogenous threats to the system. Here we have a competent intelligence organization. Depending on the state, every country would have a different intelligence center or intelligence organization. Each country will have its own. However, this participation needs to provide the system, the state or the airline or the service provider for air transport, any kind of regulated entity under a national program for civil aviation, as the ICAO has determined. And this information should help to identify these level of threat or this potential threat, or even the possibility that this threat could become a reality and commit a crime. So replying to your question, I would consider that these two big differences, on the one hand side, the nature of the risk, which on an operational security management system is a non-intentional, unintentional threat, and on the other hand side, on the civil aviation security management system, the equivalent term or terminology would be threat. The second difference, to wrap up, is the intervention of an intelligence organization or center that needs to provide information in order to determine what is the potential risk or the potential threat that is associated. This would be an unlawful interference act. Thank you very much. It's been, your explanation has been very clear. Now let us speak about the future. Franco, please, how do you see the future of the security management systems, and what are their challenges for the future? Francisco, you are on mute. Oh, sorry. Good afternoon, César, and thank you very much for giving me the floor. After listening to the different comments of my colleagues, in the case of OMA, we operate 3 airports, and despite the security management system has been there for a long time, because we started with this process 3 years ago. The first year was to initiate and to have a planning, and currently, well, last year really, we had 100% of phase 1 completed, where we worked on the 3 airports that we operate on a joint way, in a common way. And this year, we have 40% completed of phase 2, and we will probably finish successfully this second phase this year, and we will then come to the third stage, which would be basically for next year. One of the topics or the challenges for us is, well, as my previous colleagues have mentioned, is the ever-evolving threats that may start in different locations. Despite Mexico is just one country, the north is different from the south, and the south is different from east and west of the country. We have 6 states where we usually the risk is much higher than in other states. And this generates or makes us take decisions where we require or need the support by the authorities, in the sense that we have to counteract the risks that may come up. What is, or which could be one of the problems or serious threats that we face? Well, it is the participation of the authorities with intelligence information, or with information that can shed light so that we can see or find the appropriate tools and what we can do in collaboration with the authorities and with the aviation industry. I am going to give you a very clear example. Last week on Friday or Saturday, they identified MUMPADs, RPGs, type 7, and for what we can see on the images, these RPGs, well, according to our regulation, there's a lot of literature regarding these kind of threats, where we finally didn't want to work on this part as having the main role, but we wanted to help and to collaborate in RPGs. In the case of Mexico, I don't know, I believe around 200 have been identified in the last 10 years. And it is important to see what can be done in the industry together with the authorities, and this cannot be probably be seen very easily, but it is latent. And this is linked in some way to the internal threat that we have at the airports, because the internal threats that we have is the one that has a higher value for us. And sometimes we have to carry out investigation tasks that are not our role, and it would be much easier to collaborate with the authorities in this sense. So these are the challenges we are working right now, but there are challenges for the SEMS that we have to work on a joint way in collaboration. We as airport groups that, we work on this way, but there are other authorities where it would be really good to collaborate with them, mainly to have the security in place and comply with the regulations that other airports may have, and mainly the international rules.
So basically, those are my comments. Well, thank you very much. Let me go to the future. Well, sorry. I was leaving out Miguel Angel from Azure. What is the current situation in security and aviation? Good morning and afternoon. As it corresponds, I would like to thank on behalf of the Azure the invitation. So we've mentioned this in many meetings across airports. My point of view is that at present with SEMS, we lack integration. If we analyze the key components of the SEMS, we meet 6 or 5 100%, and then 2, this is a part that needs to be analyzed, and others that need to be still analyzed. So according to the Mexican regulation, we've been able to establish the minimum content in terms of security in an airport. This has been really helpful, and our communiques have been helpful for the purpose of the first 2 chapters, which is the commitment of the management and the materials. In our security programs, we establish the responsibilities and the activities that we each have within our companies and the airport community, and that way we know who is in charge of providing the materials and the human resources to perform security measures at the airport, and then threat and risk measures. As our colleague said, we need more information from the outside. Nevertheless, we are very much sure, including the Azure airports 100%, have done a local analysis. What have been the threats? What have been the risks? And based on all the situations that have come up, which fortunately have not been many, we've been able to adapt our measures and procedures and our local security program. And at the same time, remaining vigilant and ongoing improvements. Raul mentioned this already. At all airports, we do quality control. And within the quality control, we observe lots of parameters, audits, tests, inspections. And thanks to that, all airports have improved their systems. We also have a contingency plan, as mentioned from Colombia earlier. And our contingency plan will list basically all events that might come to happen in our airports. And based on the Mexican regulation, we need to do it every 2 years. It has to be real, and every year it has to be a drill, cabinet drill. And the inspection program of SEMS, we haven't developed that. And at the end of the day, it's a recommendation. All airport groups have been working in this type of thing. But we don't have an interface or a manual within SEMS and other systems to do environmental quality control, for example, or some other quality systems that we find in our airports. And then communications.
Yo reconozco en todos los aeropuertos que se lleva después de un análisis o después
I understand that this is undertaken at all airports following an audit, an analysis, an inspection, or a real event or a drill. There is an evaluation to see what we need, where we fail, what remains to be done, and so on. So all of these things are presented through a security committee. And if possible, we adapt our procedures. And then at many of Azure airports, well, not every year, but we've tried to do this. Now that it's the year of security culture, we've done some campaigns. Some of them have been local, some others have been corporate. And this has been very helpful so that people have awareness. In any case, one must take into account that this is not so easy for everyone to do, for everyone to be aware. For some people, it's just harder to understand the threat, or as Angel just mentioned, the famous SMS has more of a legal standing. And it has favored this operational level of security. And being an airport, when something happens, we of course communicate. There is no standard format. Sometimes we do it via communiques, via email, via security committee at the airport, integrating the whole airport community and its representatives, and that's what we how we communicate. It's important to point out that we need to connect to a rule to embed the 7 components of the SEMS. And it's important to measure indices, and it's important to focus more on raising awareness and creating this culture and standardizing what type of campaign, what type of communicates, what type of information is going to share with the community. Because, well, not all information integrated is offered. So it's not an SEMS, but most key components of our ICAO are included. Thank you very much. And my apologies, I almost skipped you earlier. The problem is complex and the system is complex, and definitely it will require some running time and a lot of actions to make sure it works correctly. Now, there's something quite striking to me, something I believe is very important, which is the intelligence that Angel mentioned earlier. What support do you have in terms of intelligence to do this risk analysis, and how does information flow across you? Meaning, does it flow smoothly? Do you share it or you don't? I will leave it out there and for anyone who wants to address this.
Perdón, creo que mis compañeros no levantaron la mano. Estaba esperando eso.
Okay. So my colleagues didn't raise their hands. I was actually expecting that. Truth is that we don't have a procedure. We haven't, like, let's say, intelligence authorities have not developed a procedure for airports in particular, maybe for other cases, but not for airports. In any case, we try to look for information to be able to do something with our risk analysis. This is structural, and it's very interesting to us because we have a lot of information and we must abide by international regulation. That's one of our main goals. Without that type of support, it is really hard to manage a threat that might be much larger or much smaller than what we thought. So we don't have it and we need it. That's a short answer. Anybody else? Okay, to Francisco's point, I am absolutely sure that the intelligence units of different airports do share information. And we do the analysis, the pertaining analysis. And it's quite straightforward, as Francisco said. So there's information that has impact on us, others that doesn't. And in many cases, the authorities themselves can say, well, we're just unaware of any threat, any risk. But once again, let me say, in security committees have information established, but I agree with Francisco, there is not a specific procedure for the analysis. We've discussed this often in our meetings with other airports, and I am sure that when we share information on past events, we do so, well, to use it as an example and to figure out if this might be applicable to our airport or not. Thank you. Gregorio, a question to you. How have you managed through the critical stages of the pandemic, the health and protection of the security staff at airports? Of course, security staff at airports meet all health requirements. That group of people work, of course, with the airport to apply health security measures, health safety measures for passengers at ENASA. Only passengers can go into the terminals. If you're taking somebody, you need to wait outside. If you're not flying, you're not allowed in. And security staff is, of course, complying with all health safety measures. They're tested for COVID, and if they test positive, they need to isolate. They need to quarantine. And, well, security staff have been essential to control the pandemic at airports. Well, thank you very much. Raúl, José María Peral mentioned earlier that we should include cybersecurity at SEMS. Are your airport groups ready to protect themselves from this type of attack?
Pues, la respuesta que puedo decir es la siguiente. Bueno, los grupos aeroportuarios, al formar parte, en este caso para el Grupo Aeroportuario del Pacífico, somos 14 aeropuertos. Tenemos un corporativo y tenemos una dirección de tecnologías de la información. De manera conjunta y trabajando en ese sentido, es la forma en la que el grupo podría empezar a tener esas bases para poder empezar a trabajar el tema de la ciberseguridad. Efectivamente, pues somos vulnerables a cualquier medio electrónico. Tenemos abiertos muchos canales de información hacia el público a través de las redes sociales y de los medios electrónicos. Y obviamente esas barreras tecnológicas que se tienen que gestionar, pues sí, tienen que estar dadas y trabajadas con estos departamentos. Entonces, internamente sí, el grupo está trabajando en ese sentido. Hay un área destinada y definida para ello. Aunque actualmente, por otro lado, en la normativa de la autoridad aeroportuaria, pues como lo mencionó, es algo que se va a estar trabajando el desarrollo del CEMS que se está gestionando para México y va a estar incluido una parte por ese tema de ciberseguridad, puesto que se está considerando una amenaza directa también para este
tema. So yes, cybersecurity is a problem that's going to be is pressing now, and it will be increasingly pressing going forward. Angel, one last question for you. Do you have any program to enhance this security-driven culture within your group? Well, yes.
Tenemos internamente
internally
unos sistemas de gestión.
We have management systems. This is mandated by our security management, and we have defined a very simple, basic security culture within the security department, where we share quality risks regarding security services. We share information type of risk, or we share intelligence. And right now we're carrying out an effort to make sure that this basic level of security culture permeates across the organization, because this year is the year of security culture, as declared by the CAO. We want to drive this forward, make sure we ride the wave, the momentum. And of course, it is not easy for our organization, which is quite large, to do this, but at the end of the day, we will have to make sure that this culture permeates across all. It's a challenge, definitely, and our airports work on this. Of course, we are a big organization. We must work on this, and we are a public institution. And because of that, there's certain barriers, regulatory compliance, unlike a concession airport, there's barriers to private investment. But definitely, it is a challenge for us to have this security culture.
That's right. It's a challenge, and it's also a need for all of us, organizations as large as airports or civil aviation in general. So many people working in an airport, for example, there's a need for this security culture comes through all the members in the airport, and it's a big challenge. Well, thank you all. We do not have any more time to continue. I confess I would have loved to continue speaking with you for a longer time, but we do not have any more time. We have Javier, who is coming next, and we have to leave the room for the next speakers. It's been a pleasure to share this panel with you, and I give you farewell and hope to see you very soon. Thank you very much.